Hello, it's Charlene Lee, and I am here today to talk about digital leadership or leadership in the digital world and era. This is something I talk quite a bit about, and I thought I'd revisit it today because I keep getting questions from people about how do I extend my leadership into the digital space? You may feel very comfortable being a leader in the real world, but the changes that have happened over the past couple of months have all forced us to extend our leadership into these digital spaces, especially if you are working with people in remote situations, which is many of us these days. But I also think that this is true even if you are working in a physical environment where you are connecting with people, maybe not in person, but through various devices like computers or even the mobile phone. How do we be leaders? How do we show up? And I think this is extremely important because the way that we form relationships oftentimes now is through the digital space. And relationships begin with conversations. And if you don't know how to or feel comfortable and confident having these conversations in these digital spaces, then you're not going to be as an effective leader as possible because this is where people now form these relationships. And remember, leadership is just simply a relationship between people who are trying to create change and aspire to lead, and the people who are inspired to follow them. So if we are going to do this in the digital space, then we have to feel comfortable being leaders here. So I want to welcome those of you who are joining. Please share where you're coming from and also share a way that you are showing up as a leader in these digital spaces. Because it's one thing to show up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram as your individual self. It is a completely different activity to show up as a leader and to be able to command that space, command a presence, and to be able to develop that influence. So I'm going to talk about, first of all, a couple steps. And just so you have it, I also have it available at this digital engagement workshop sheet that I have. And it's really helpful because it's this worksheet that I've been using in my workshops. And I want to make it available to people who would like to be able to use it. And it goes through these 4 steps. And I'm going to go through them very quickly and also see if you have any questions along the way. So first of all, I just want to welcome Tim coming in from the UK, Michael from India, and Angelica from Mexico. Thanks so much for joining. Carlos from Brazil and Annelies from Netherlands. Who had to cut out. I lived in the Amsterdam for 2 years, so it's great to practice my little bit of Dutch that I know. We have Margit from Senegal and Orlando from Buenos Aires. I love the international aspect of this. So let's get started. The first thing that I would say when you're thinking about being a leader, and this is the thing that I've always said to people. People ask me all the time, how do I get my leader on digital? How do I get myself on digital? And I never, ever start with the technology. This has all to do with what you see yourself as a leader and what your top goals are. So literally write down, what are your top goals? What are you trying to achieve as a leader? And then very clearly identify the audience you have to reach in order for that goal to be achieved. It could be customers, a new group of customers, existing customers. It could be a group of employees. It could be investors. It could be any number of people. But list your goal and then list out who you want your audience to be that you want to influence them. And then understand the needs of that audience. What do they need to hear from you in order for the action to be taken, in order for you together to move forward? That's extremely important because your leadership needs a direction. It needs a focus. And if you're very clear about what your goals are, which most leaders are, then you know what you need to focus on in order to engage with them in the digital space. So the first thing, again, just identify what your goals are, identify the audiences associated with their goals, and understand what they need to hear from you. What do they need in terms of engagement with you in this digital space? The second thing then is to listen to them. I love this quote from Epictetus, the Greek philosopher from 2,000 years ago. And so he said, we were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and use them in that proportion. So we should be listening twice as much as we speak as leaders. And I can't think of a better way to listen to the audiences than through the digital and social tools that are available. So think about this. If you were to walk into a cocktail party and you were to walk into a conversation, you wouldn't just start spouting whatever it is that you wanted to talk about. You would first listen. You would understand the context of where this conversation is going to take place. And then you would be able to frame the words that you want to say, the ideas that you want to convey in the context of the conversation that is going on. And there's nothing different than what happens in the digital and the social spaces too. So take the time to listen, engage in the conversation that's already happening. And then when the time is right and appropriate, then also say your piece. And one of the best ways to do that is through the various social channels. And what I love about this, it doesn't require you to say anything. All you have to do is just show up and listen. So, for example, if you were on LinkedIn, go and start listening to your feed. Go and listen to and search out the people who you want to be talking to. Those audiences, again, that you identified in the very first exercise. Who are those audiences? What are they saying? What's on their mind? And then that'll give you an idea of how to begin the conversations that will be interesting to them. The third step is to think about the stories that you can share. And I don't think about it as content, I think about it as stories. We as humans love stories. The better the story, the more personal, the more emotional the story, the more we remember it, and the more likely we are to share it. Remembering it, internalizing it, and sharing it is what the power of stories come from. So think about what you want to share in the arc of a story, beginning, middle, end. It could just be a single point of view that you have. But think about a story you'd want to share. So many things happen to us every day. And for us to be able to share that perspective, share how something impacted us, how it made us feel, how it helped us think about what we're trying to achieve against those three goals in a very different way. So think about a story that you could share with somebody. You probably shared a story over this weekend or the past week or even today that could bear worth sharing again through the digital channels. And don't worry too much about having it to be unique. I look at it this way. The story that you tell is the story that only you can tell. And so tell that story. Even if it's been told a gazillion times, the fact that you are telling it in the context of these goals that you want to achieve with the people you want to achieve with, that is different and unique to this time and place. So think about a story, put your personal edge onto it, your personal point of view, and then tell the story. And here's my little secret. I think for most of us, we're not used to typing out a story. We're used to telling a story. So get out this wonderful device that all of us have in our pockets, and record a story. It's going to be a little bit weird, holding it up and recording a story, but record a video and tell the story in that way. You may never have to post a story, but the fact that you say it, you could use that video, or you could take that, transcribe it. I love a site called rev.com to quickly transcribe something, and voila, you have a post. And I find that anything you can do to reduce the hurdles and the burden and the obstacles that lie in the way of you trying to create content to start these conversations is a great way to do it. Even just think about just posting a picture, because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, you can say so much more with pictures, which is why I think pictures on posts like in LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook are so incredibly powerful. And the last part is to think about engagement and how, once you post that up, how will you choose to engage with the people who see it and read it? I can guarantee you will get some engagement. It may not be a lot, but as you do this over time, you will find more and more people want to engage with you, especially if you are doing a really good job of listening and talking into that conversation. Again, this may not have to be even on your site, on your profile. It could be somebody who you're listening to and following, and you see them writing a story or posting something, and you could just chime in like with your own story, and you're starting to engage in that way. So a couple pro tips, and then I'll turn it over to see if there are any questions to say hello to some more people. Some pro tips. As you're going through your day, make a list of all the things that you think might be interesting things to write a story about, to tell a story about, and keep them in your notebook. Or I tend to put it into my Evernote and then tag it with blog. It's just an easy, quick way for me to keep a running list of all the ideas that I have. And then here's the little secret though. Don't just post a topic, post a headline, because a headline requires that you have a point of view, that it says this is the topic and this is my spin on it. So it's not just artificial intelligence. It's about how artificial intelligence is changing my life today in the car or something like that. But whatever is that perspective that you have, that point of view, make it the center of that list. And then one other pro tip, this is a dirty little secret about posting. You can schedule your posts. You can go ahead and write a ton of them ahead of time and then schedule them using tools. Sometimes they're built into tools like Twitter now, but you can also use tools like Buffer, or the one I use is Hootsuite, and use those to be able to, I call it binge posting, where you can write a lot of these posts all in one sitting. Just go through your list of headlines and just start writing them, videoing them, and then post them up online and then schedule them to go out over the next week or two or even a month. This is a really powerful tool because you're batch processing things when you're in that place. This doesn't substitute the spontaneous posts that you would want to have, the sharing and the posting of pictures in the moment, but it's a nice way to be able to do this. And the third pro tip is that once you start engaging, as you are a leader, you know that consistency is absolutely key. You need to show up. You need to show up as a leader consistently. That could be once a month. It could be once a week. It could be every day. And the frequency depends on how often you think your audience needs to hear from you. How often do they need to hear from you, engage with you, in order for the two of you, the two groups, to be able to achieve your common goals? So that's a quick wind up of how to think about things. And I think one of the key ways to be thinking about this, the most important tool, is that this is going to feel very, very uncomfortable. If you haven't been doing this on a regular basis, to force yourself to go out there and start sharing these stories, extending your leadership into this digital space. So this is my very last tip. You know you're doing it right if your palms are sweating and your stomach is churning. I know for myself that every time before I do these broadcasts, I get a little kick of adrenaline. And the way that I can keep it from going out into full out anxiety and instead excitement is that I have confidence that I've done this a few times now, and that sweaty palms turns into excitement. But I can tell you, every single time I post, every time I hit the broadcast, every time I hit the submit button, my palms get a little sweaty. It never goes away. And if it goes away, then you're not caring enough. You don't care enough, and you're not pushing yourself enough to extend yourself. And this is what leaders know. We as leaders know that we are extending ourselves out. We're putting ourselves up on that ledge because it's worth it. It's worth it for the cause and the goals that we are trying to achieve. And so I encourage you to extend yourself as far as possible into the digital and social spaces so that you can achieve your objectives that are audacious and beautiful and disruptive. And I really encourage you to take a look at how you can use these tools in the more effective way. So let's see who else is on here and see if any other questions. Wow, there's a lot more people here. All right, let's see. I'm going to go back a little bit. We have Carlos from Brazil. We got this already. Margit from Senegal. Orlando from Buenos Aires. Thanks for joining. Ruth from Mexico. Victor from Venezuela. We got this is great. Philip from Burundi. Steve, San Antonio. Thank you for joining. Tapam from India. So many. Chris, Fasim, Rick, Fahim, Nada. I'm just going to go through the list really quickly. There's so many people. Ayodapa from the UK, Delhi from Mexico. Nada, thanks for doing this. And I love some of these comments that people are sharing. Also, Margit has a particular question. If you consider that some seniors are not comfortable with technologies, is it possible for them to lead their team as you were explaining it? Absolutely. One of my favorite examples is the chairman from Marriott. And I think he's well into his 80s now, and he blogs on a regular basis, even though he can't type. So, what he does is he writes it out onto a legal pad and he gives it to somebody, and they post it up online. But it's his stories, it's his point of view. And I look at it this way: if you are fairly advanced in age, or if you're just not comfortable with technology, I think it's even more important that you figure out the stories that you can tell. And I can't think of very many people who are in leadership positions who aren't capable of using video or FaceTime or Skype, or being able to use the video on their phones to be able to record something, or even just to write out a story, a couple ideas, and to share a picture. So you can usually get somebody on your team, if it's a senior person, to help that person get their story into the digital spaces, but it's got to be them telling their story. I think you've seen oftentimes these executives who post fairly frequently, but you can tell it's not them, it's their team, because it doesn't have that authentic ring. It doesn't have that voice that is clearly their voice. I think it's fine to use Teams. I think it's fine to have other people write things up for you, as long as it is your story, your point of view that align with what you're trying to achieve as one of your top goals. I get that question quite a bit, actually, that this is a generational thing. And yet, what my research has found that young people who are early in their leadership journey are just as hesitant to post. Just because you're comfortable with technology doesn't mean that you're comfortable leading with technology. It is a very different experience. I've always believed that it's so much easier to get an executive who is comfortable and experienced in their leadership to show them how to extend it into the digital space than to get somebody who's comfortable with digital to be a leader, to show up as a leader when they haven't done it for very long. So this is my experience. And the key has always been to connect everything that you're doing in this digital space for those senior leaders back to their top 3 goals. If it doesn't align with their top 3 goals, they are not interested, because they are successful leaders because they focus so well on those top 3 goals. So if you're trying to get them to do something and it doesn't align with those top 3 goals, it doesn't work. And if you focus on the technologies rather than what those technologies can do for that leader, it also doesn't work. All right, let's see. Just a couple other people I just want to say hello to, and then see if there's any other questions. We have also coming in from Brazil, Amari and Maria, and then Mustafa from Ghana, Omar from Chad, Deepak from UAE, Kaya also from Brazil, and then we have Paul from Kenya. Thanks so much for joining. Monique from the US, thanks for joining. And then we have Becky from South of Africa. And I just want to encourage you to, again, continue posting. I will be checking the comments after the broadcast too as well. So again, if you would like to download this worksheet that I have, go to bit.ly/digital-engagement-worksheet, and you'll be able to get that worksheet there. It takes you through those 4 steps. I wish you the best on this journey. And I think one of the ways to do this is to think about how you would normally talk to people. What would you say in a leadership situation? And those things that you would say, those stories that you will tell, you want to bring into the digital and social spaces too. All right, good luck to all of you. I would love to hear how your journey is going. Please share your experiences with me in the various social channels. I would love to hear how it goes. All the best to you, and thanks for watching.